have the meeting link?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Next meeting is at Summit.
Yes. Next month. Yes. Yeah, that's on June 11th.
Good morning.
You didn't go through the complete streets workshop, huh? I thought you were just,
Well, we checked in. So, bridges, when's that one that's supposed to be get out? When's that gonna happen?
So they just got, yesterday, they just got the last landowner to sign construction.
Okay,
So I haven't heard the date of going out to bid, but
Okay.
now they can schedule.
all right.
They were waiting on that from.
Where's that one?
That one is Shrewd Hill and Oak.
Oh,
Township.
okay, so not Waterford.
No.
Waterford.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, yeah. But, the interesting thing is, Feed Road Bridge is the Mango Township, that was termed a tradition. We've never signed them money. But I did talk to them and tell them that, we have a program way back when.
Yeah.
with the tradition. So they got Mark Corey, they just told Mark Corey, okay, start engineering. So Mark is just everything engineering, no one told me or anybody else that they wanted to.
Gotcha.
So I'm.
Wonder you get to take help off stuff.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Peter. Well, I'm glad you got it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but yes, as soon as I know a date for sure, so,
Okay,
because I mean, ideally, we just.
Yeah.
I will.
all right, sounds good.
Yeah, but yeah, that one's about.
Knew we had one coming.
Yeah. Like, did I mute myself? Do I need to mute myself?
on yours?
Yeah, are you good? Like,
Yeah, I'm good. I haven't started it yet.
okay, you haven't started it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yours is up.
Yes, it
Okay,
is up. I'm sharing screen. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we'll
I think I do.
and then just your laptop on your computer.
Where are you?
Sitting there. I'll sit over here.
Oh, I don't. Do you need the extension set?
Right.
Enough? I didn't. Yeah, I actually. Yeah, I don't think. I think I might be okay with that. But it's good to. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. All right. Are we muted? No. Okay.
I
Yeah.
do not.
Announce or if you do the clicking on, they either use whatever
Okay.
will work it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you coming. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fine.
You know, if you guys want any more.
Yes.
You will.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, okay, because I don't see any.
And well,
Hello, Brad.
I'm
here. Yeah.
Some MPA TAC left. Yeah.
I don't see anybody.
Oh, okay.
See anyone on your end? No. Okay. Just shows us. Okay. I'll leave this on the side. You have-
Doing all right.
Yeah. Once we get started, I can.
Good, so we can do that. Yeah, looks like you got,
I'm like, they were all bringing up there.
yeah, I know.
So, yeah, so the guys are getting everything ready and they.
Did you get me?
I go out, sure, mask.
Oh,
Yes, yes,
So I called
yes.
Fuel mask, like, please, send me mask, so I can get that. Cracks, so.
Yeah.
And they did it.
He's like, you're. Ceilings down and Bill.
no,
So I told him, you want to see?
yeah, yeah,
We can, you know,
yeah,
and we're trying to get everything right.
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
But how you doing?
Good, just trying to get.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Without wine, you know.
Anything back yet?
No. You know, the weather just doesn't.
Yeah,
He said it would take for us.
we always said, you know, imagine how different you, you know, starting or I mean, they got 9 months a year almost. They could do all this. Like, fire dogs.
Oh, no. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Everything on the list checked out.
I would be.
And we're scrambled, so we're afraid.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the same folder.
Mastic, can't put mastic in the same, can't use it, couldn't even use that.
With the mask, I got over this.
Oh, yeah.
It was a different one than I did.
Yeah, we were looking at trying to get her out there ready to send it out here to do some paint. Well, no, she's not going to, like north of Edinburgh. They patched it, everything. You know,
If that mask, I could work nice, kind of like right down there.
Oh, I know.
yeah,
I know, can't watch it.
yeah, yeah.
It's just, I have to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, that's good.
But, that one thing.
Yeah.
Was there a reason that you're studying on red ridges or guy night? We got it. Just got that.
We'll take
Oh, okay, let's.
Yeah.
It has, so it is.
Yeah.
Donate deeper than he should. You know, and then folks getting bit of weight. We sit around a lot of our activities.
Yeah.
Where the ground settles, you know.
Okay.
And it just.
Yeah.
It's a little-
Oh, our slow. Yeah, they.
Hey, are you going to
77.
Yeah.
So that instead of
Yeah.
calling it an angle.
Just concrete, yeah. 3/4. Concrete, guys, 5 years old, summer line joints. Concrete, it's like, we got like a V knot like this.
We might not know.
Hanging in there. About normal. We can do anymore.
You?
How are you? I think we're making some progress.
I know everybody. Bizarre.
I don't feel. I feel.
I know.
I did. Yeah. Oh, did you think?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He called me on the way up and said he was gonna get it. He said he was gonna get it to me in the next 3 days.
Yeah. No, actually, I don't know.
And I said, okay, I said, I'll make it up. I could do it. So, he was just asking questions on labor and industry, in order to know where to get those L&I rates.
Yeah.
Over the website.
It's not Bill.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. Good. Somebody's coming in. Okay.
Yeah, I can do whatever you want.
We're a little worried.
So, or something, or. Let me know.
We're still waiting for. Okay, come on.
Right, that's fine. Just give me the high side. Okay.
I mean, I want.
Oh, there's. Oh, lots of people are coming online.
Okay.
Like relate.
But, no.
I don't know how this works. Yeah. Okay, that actually, Anna, that should be good. We should have more now.
Okay.
So,
We're ready to go?
We're ready.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Started. We think we have everybody we need online right now, so. Next item of business will be public comment on agenda items. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on any of the items on today's agenda?
This is Fred Stepford. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Freda.
Unfortunately, I have I'm going to turn my sound off so I don't hear. I have a couple of comments, and I may have so under 99750, where it says Prescott traffic signal upgrades. You have mentioned a whole variety of reasons why you're doing the upgrades, but you don't mention anything about improving pedestrian safety and access. I certainly hope that you are going to be adding accessible pedestrian signals as part of this project, and I don't understand why it would be included in the explanation of what the project is. In the list of administrative modifications to the highway, bridge, and transit, there was an item that I saw yesterday, and then I couldn't find it this morning, but it was under the obligations, and it was the SR20 Chestnut Street to Imperial Parkway. I was on site for the Safe Streets for All session last week at West 26th Street, which is on SR20, and State Street, which is just a block. It's basically SR 505 is included in that intersection for all intents and purposes. And I wondered, why was there no APS added when the APSs were added from Chestnut Street all the way to Zook, which is a very welcome project, and also to the east. And I was told by the city traffic engineer that since the light regularly cycles on and off with a pin timing, that there was no need to redo that signal. And I said, but there's no APS there. This is a major intersection right by the high school and the stadium, and there's bus stops and a lot of pedestrian activity. And I don't understand why it wasn't included. And I see you're moving money around and obligating money, and you're making changes to a plan that goes through 2028. And I think that this intersection, and probably the intersection of Peach and SR20, should also get upgraded to having accessible pedestrian signals. Also, as far as the transit planning, I'm hoping to hear an update today that the planning for the transit operational plan, not the infrastructure plans, is going to be soon be underway in public involvement. It's very unfortunate with all the considerations of funding of transit at the state level to not be able to point to a plan that indicates the needs for improvements and funding in Erie, but that's the place that we are right now. And now I'm going to do something very unusual. I'm going to provide a compliment. I am still totally opposed to the Central Bayfront Parkway project. I think the whole idea of the project is very aggressive and counter to trends all across the country. Nevertheless, I do want to say that during the construction period, pedestrian access has been very well handled by the people from PennDOT who are administering the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Freda. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. The next item is the minutes from the last meeting. Hopefully everybody has had a chance to review those. If they have, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Oh, moved.
Thank you.
A second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, then I will call for the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the Transportation Improvement Plan. First up is 2025 to 2028 administrative modifications to highway, bridge, and transit. Julia, do we have you online?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so yeah, I just have a couple actions I wanted to talk about. Um, so in the administrative actions, number 9 is the first one.
Under review, top.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
So this action was to add the final design phase of this project to the tip. $157,655 in federal STP funds were added to the City of Corey resurfacing project in federal fiscal year 2025. And the source was the Erie Highway Bridge line item. And the next action I wanted to highlight is number 13. And so this was to also add the final design project or final design phase to this project to the tip. And this was adding 220,000 in federal STP funds to the SR 77 West Church Street to SR 426 project in federal fiscal year 2025. And the source of funding was the City of Corey resurfacing project that was being adjusted to match the estimate for the final design phase. And that was it. But if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Julia. Does anybody have any questions for her on those items? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next up, we have Emily is going to talk about the 2025 to 2028 amendment vote results.
Yes, thank you all for those who cast e-ballot votes. We've had 2 recently, one for the local federal aid route going to Euclid Boulevard, as well as a transit tip amendment. All of the voting results are included. They were unanimously in favor of both amendments. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about those amendment votes? All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep the spotlight on you, Emily. Next up is the UPWP update.
Yeah. So really quickly, the UPWP had to be updated to remove some wording in order to comply with new federal regulation. So some of the text of our UPWP has been tweaked so that it is palatable to everyone. We've removed things like environmental justice and inserted instead like demographic analysis. So depending on what guidance we get from federal highways about what that demographic analysis will be, we will follow them. So right now, we're not changing anything programmatically in the UPWP. Everything is staying the same. We just changed some words to make sure everything is compliant with the new executive orders that are going on, since we are a federally funded organization. We don't want to do anything to jeopardize our federal funding coming into Erie County for transportation. So that is the big thing. So that is updated on our website. The other thing that is updated from the UPWP is those complete streets workshops that are funded with our UPWP. Freda mentioned them. She did attend one that we had this week in the city of Erie on 26th and State. Those went very well. We had 2 of them, one in Summit and Union City, and then the other ones in the city of Erie. So please be looking forward to the next steps. We have a draft policy template that will be coming out for everyone to look at, and another meeting to discuss that policy template. So please keep that in mind. It's coming up. Working with Emerson Bannon here at the Erie County Department of Planning and WRA are helping us with this Complete Streets initiative. So that is ongoing and will be wrapped up by June 30th of this year.
All right, well, I guess we'll just continue with you. Yes, the next item is the alternative fuel survey.
Yes, so you may remember last year, PennDOT put out a NEVI survey on electric vehicles. So we did get some good feedback from that survey, but PennDOT would like us to do a little more. So I created an alternative fuel survey to look at alternative fuel charging that's available in Erie County, and then ask people if they need additional charging facilities. So this map, which will be on our website, shows where EV registrations are, but maps all of the points where we have existing charging stations, so for electric vehicles, but as well as things like CNG, the compressed natural gas, which we have here at EMTA. There are also propane fueling stations for transportation here. There's high ethanol count fueling stations that we have at some sheets. You may know we produce biodiesel at Hero BX, but we do not have an existing public facility where you can just go and buy the biofuels. So even though we are producing them here in Erie County residents can't just go and buy that for their vehicle. So that was an interesting thing that I noticed. So this survey will go out. It will ask about what other facilities may be needed in the county and where they should be located. So please do fill it out. I will send it out after this meeting. And it will be open for a month. And hopefully we'll get some additional feedback on where things are needed in Erie County.
QR code works.
Good. Yes, if you want to do it right now, the QR code does work. That QR code that is on your paper. You can do it right now, get it over with. It's a 5-minute survey. I promise you can do it during the meeting. I won't be offended.
It's only 3 questions.
It's 3 questions.
I
Yeah.
get 1, 2, 3, 4.
Emily, is this in anticipation of, making money available for charging stations?
See, that's a good question. Originally it was for this NEVI community charging program. But with the new changes in federal administration, it's unclear what will happen. Maybe we will have those funds, but we might not. So that's why this is a little broader than that additional NEVI push that was just.
Where's PennDOT?
I think Emily, you said it perfectly. There's, I don't think we have a ton of clarity right now. So we still have, obviously some projects already funded, either already built or in construction on the NEVI plan or SAFE, but, Emily's talking about sort of the next stage of planning, and we're just, we're kind of operating in that, I would say, cautious phase, but still wanting to keep things rolling to the extent that we can. Not a great answer, but we don't know. It's the bottom.
But do you still have any money left in the money that you already had that you can still put out?
I don't know. Do you know, Courtney?
I know that what has been obligated, we're moving forward with, and everything else is off hold. All I think.
We haven't gotten definitive guidance to say, hey, this is done, or this is how it will continue. We just don't know.
Yes.
What's kind of disturbing, looking at that map, is that if I bought a Tesla in Corey, or an Albion, or an Edinburgh, it seems, I would have to make trips to Erie to charge if I didn't have a home charger. Now, I'm sure we don't have that many Teslas and electric EVs sold, although all the dealers now are starting to produce full EVs in the cheaper models. So I think there's going to be more sales. I know Kia has come out with, Hyundai, I'm sure all the others with full EVs. And is there any money available for these people to put in home chargers? Is there any grant programs? Does anybody know?
Not that I'm aware of.
It looks like Sheetz and Walmart have been the two. In my travels, when I go to Kentucky, it seems that those are about the only two I find too. Sheetz seems to have grabbed a hold of EV charging stations throughout. And Walmart, I don't see too many charging stations at other providers. Is there anything in legislation now? I know a few years ago there was, but it didn't really come to be fully, that it would encourage these companies to provide charging stations. Of course, that's going to have an effect on the gas tax too. So, just a question at this point as you look at the survey.
Yes.
Emily, is this simplifying it, giving money to businesses to provide charging stations, but not the country fair for a gas station?
Well, we don't have any money.
Okay,
This is basically.
but is that kind of the concept? Because
The idea of the survey, I will say, is just to ask the public where they would like charging stations. Would they like them at a country fair? Or would they like them on a public street? If they don't have a driveway, should investments be made there? Should investments be made at universities or public facilities like a transit agency? Should they be in public parks? You know, it's more an idea of where the public, or, I mean, the MPO members, where people would like to put the charging station. And then, yes, then it would be funding. If people say they want them at a country fair, give money to country
okay,
fair.
but not gas stations, not a fuel pump, only a charging station.
That's interesting.
That's ridiculous.
I think Sheetz is really brilliant because you're gonna be caught at Sheetz for a half hour if you're traveling. The one up on I-90 sometimes is full. Those people are sitting there for a half hour. Guess what Sheetz sells? They sell fast food. So
But that's a choice.
I think that's gonna be a thing for them. Plus, they have to get payback.
Well, yeah, but
And I understand your
Sheetz
question,
isn't,
but I'm just saying.
Sheetz isn't getting funding to put gas
No,
stations
but
there,
they're
fuel pumps.
brilliant, I think, and I think Country Fair will get there someday in the fact that you're gonna make money because you have these people trapped for a half hour. What are they gonna do in that half hour? They're gonna spend some money.
But you're saying public funds, why should?
Yeah, that's
public
not my
funds-
problem. That was a choice to buy an electric car, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I'm not advocating for public funds to go to like Sheetz and things. I think we and Corey looked at a program that had a subsidy, but we would have And it would have been more public access type thing, like, we were thinking of putting it like at the city park or somewhere where public could go in, and it's like a tire inflator. You put $1 in and, you get, you know what I mean, you pay for it. It kind of fell through, but, there's programs out there right now.
So I think that Emily or Ron, what I'm hearing is that this program is kind of in limbo right now because of what's happening with federal highways. We don't know if there'll be any additional sites funded under the NEVI, but you're doing the survey now and you've expanded it beyond electric to compressed natural gas and other fuel sources just to see what the needs might be throughout the county in case funding comes
Yes.
available in the future.
Yes. And if people think that no money should go to private industry, if it only should go to public locations, yeah, that would be something to add to the survey. I mean, that's useful feedback. That could be used.
Yeah, and if anybody has, the NEVI plan, this is like what we're talking about here is just sort of a piece of the planning part of the whole NEVI program, which came through IIJA. So, that funding was made available through that federal infrastructure law, which then PennDOT at a statewide level obviously said we want to take advantage of this where we can. So, there's been charging stations, like I said, already installed. Many of them, I think, are at, gas stations and things like that. And there's a whole plan of the interstate network across the state of the goal to have a charging station, I think every 50 miles is the goal along that whole network. So there's progress on that. There's tons of information on our website. If anybody is interested in more, we can stop and see one of us. We can share that info.
All right, well, thank you. Next up are some subcommittee reports. So the first is the long-range transportation plan. I unfortunately was not able to attend the last meetings of both subcommittees, but Emily filled me in and kept everybody informed. So Emily, feel free to jump in if I misspeak or don't share enough information. But for the long-range transportation plan, the last meeting, the consultant WRA shared their scope of work with us, and their current task right now is to work on the public participation plan. Some of the discussions that occurred at the meeting had to do with the fact that there are a couple other major plans ongoing that are seeking public participation, such as the MTA. And would it make sense to coordinate those efforts, and rather than hitting people multiple times for their input, could we all work together and do some sort of coordinated public outreach on a couple of different fronts? And so the consultant's working on that right now to see if they can come up with a plan in order to do that. Next on the MPO bylaws committee, the last meeting was mostly hashing out proposals for how the membership of both the coordinating committee and the technical advisory committee will be laid out. That was kind of hashed out, and there's a proposal on the table. And so the subcommittee now has, for the first time, a full draft version of the bylaws, including all new language and new committee structure. So they're currently reviewing those. We are currently reviewing those right now. Our next meeting will be for us to give our feedback and do some refinements based on the full document. And then once that's done, we'll be distributing it to the coordinating and the TAC for their input. So that's where we stand on both of those. Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next, we have a guest with us here today. Peter Voorhees is going to talk about passenger rail economic impacts. Peter, welcome.
Hey, should I pull a chair and just sit right up there? Would that be good?
You are welcome to.
I'll switch down.
Let's see.
Yeah, switch down.
My share.
Everybody.
Oh, no.
Because I can go this way.
If it's all right for me to just put these on the table here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's good. If you want to sit by the mouse, you can do this.
That's fine then. And perhaps I'll look at this screen rather than that one.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Voorhees. I'm a transportation planner. I'm not an engineer. My degree is in city planning. And my career in recent years has focused on passenger rail planning, transit corridor planning. And my understanding is that there has been local interest in passenger rail generally, and specifically in an economic impact study to understand better the benefits of passenger rail. And I just want to frame this real quickly that not every passenger rail line is the same. We'll talk a little bit about the one that goes right behind us. I see the freight train moving right behind us right now. That comes through, if you're wanting to go towards New York City, you catch it in the early morning, very reasonable. If you want to go towards Chicago, you catch it at what, 2:15 in the morning, something like that, which is less attractive. The more attractive the passenger rail service is, the more economic activity is generated around that service, the more it's important to people, right? And so let's just see how this is working here. Can I just click forward?
You have to scroll down with the mouse.
Scroll down with the mouse. Okay, that's fine then. Okay, so we've talked about.
I'll make it full screen just a second.
That's great.
Come on.
That's okay. We can just
Yeah.
scroll. It's gonna be just fine. Quick overview. I know I have just a few minutes here. I don't want to take all your time. But we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to deliver an economic impact study. The most important thing is we need to make assumptions about what the service is we're talking about. And if we're just talking about the service that's out there today, there is impact with that service. Much greater impact if trends continue here in this part of Pennsylvania as they are around the country right now. It's really a renaissance era for passenger rail right now in this country. So we'll get into that. So quick introduction to passenger rail types. How about if I just zoom out just a little bit here? There, now we can see more of the screen. Don't want to dwell on this quickly, but this is the type of service that's coming through Erie today. It's referred to as an Amtrak long distance service. Amtrak funds wholly through congressional allocations services that are 750 miles in length and longer. These are the Amtrak lines that cross all the way across the country, Chicago to the West Coast, for example. And we've got a few of them out here to the east. And the Lakeshore Limited is one of them. It connects Chicago with Boston and New York City, and it happens to come through Erie. The trips are really scheduled for what is convenient in Chicago and Boston and New York City, not what's in the middle of the corridor. So it's not really a service that's oriented towards Erie and Cleveland or even Buffalo, thinking more about the needs at the major cities out on the edges. There are other types of passenger rail in Pennsylvania. The first type, and this is really the focus of a lot of planning around the country right now, is what's usually referred to as a state-supported service. Often it just operates in a single state. A great example of this is the Pennsylvanian service that connects New York City outside the state, but then down to Philadelphia, and primarily it's crossing Philadelphia, crossing Pennsylvania, connecting Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh, squiggling through the mountains. Johnstown has a station, for example. It's not particularly fast. It's not particularly car competitive for travel times, and yet it's really important to a lot of users. And we can get into this in a moment, you know, who rides trains. I don't know if I even skipped over that slide, but we can get there. It's important to a lot of people. There's been desire to grow that service a little bit. It's growing from 1 round trip per day to 2 round trips. And there's been talk of extending that service, working with Ohio to get it to Cleveland, for example. But that's a good example. of a state-supported service, operating typically on host freight railroads. Then there's high-performance passenger rail. A great example of this would be the Keystone Corridor in Pennsylvania. Connects Harrisburg to Philadelphia and then does make the connection up to New York City. That is a corridor that is dedicated to passenger service. It is electrified. You see a wire up above. Trains are operating up to 110 miles per hour in the Pennsylvania portion of that corridor, up to 125 miles per hour once it gets onto the main line from Philadelphia to New York City. But really key is not just speed, it's how frequently it operates. You can go to the station and know that there's a train coming soon. You really have to work with the schedule. And there are lots of examples of that emerging around the country now. And then there's high-speed rail. High-speed rail is not something that we typically think of in the United States, but it is coming on. And we do have one example that does serve parts of eastern Pennsylvania. Keys to high-speed rail is, yes, it is fast. It is not only competitive with auto travel, but it's competitive with air travel in many markets. If you're traveling from New York City to Washington, D.C., for a lot of travelers, it's preferable to be on the train than on an airplane. And you don't have to go through a long security check. You sit down, you can get to work right away if you're a business person, or you can relax and get caught up on some rest or walk around and have a snack. And it's time competitive with air travel. You're downtown to downtown in a time competitive way with flying. That particular service on the Northeast Corridor, the Acela Express, operates up to 150, soon 160 miles per hour, high performance and high frequency. But then there's international standard high-speed rail, something that we don't have operating in North America yet. In fact, not in the Western Hemisphere yet, but it's coming. The international standard is to operate up to 220 miles per hour. You see it across Europe and Asia in really unexpected places now. Morocco has high-speed rail, for example. It's coming to Africa and Australia. And it's coming to the United States. Again, frequent service, very high performance, separated from other traffic. And keep me on track here. How much time? 5 more minutes? Yeah, okay. All right. There are 2 high-speed rail projects in construction in the United States right now. One is famously the California High-Speed Rail Project. That is a state that can take on delivering a project like this on its own. California is a nation unto itself, right? Texas has been exploring a similar project. But the one that's under construction right now that's very interesting is from Greater Los Angeles to Las Vegas. And that is being delivered by a privately led entity. And that delivery is coming much more rapidly than we've seen with California High-Speed Rail. In fact, California High-Speed Rail, I remember when it started up as a thing in about 2000, something like that. Brightline West just went to construction, and it expects to be operating before 2030. It expects to operate about a year before the first segment of California High-Speed Rail is operating. So it's a very interesting new delivery model. Both of those designed to go up to 220 miles per hour. And there are lots of jobs and lots of economic activity associated with passenger rail. Here in Erie, WabTech is providing components and equipment for this growth of passenger rail around the country. And in upstate New York, not too far away, the newest generation of the Amtrak Acela high-speed equipment is under construction. They're assembling that in Hornell. And the Brightline West high-speed rail equipment is not too far away in Horseheads, New York is where they're assembling that. Lots of jobs associated. So what kind of a network are we talking about then if we want to do an economic impact analysis. And Emily, you can talk a little bit about, the MPO's potential role with an economic impact analysis. We need to assume a network. And what's a reasonable network to assume? We can talk about planning studies that have been performed fairly recently. Amtrak did one in 2021 that assumed, for example, add a state-supported passenger rail extension of services in New York to Cleveland through Erie. So there's adding one round trip during the daytime, right? That could get you to Buffalo to make connections to go beyond. And the important connections there, I just want to say real quick, not just upstate New York and towards New York City, Albany with connections over to Boston, but Toronto is really emerging as a major attractor of trips. And I've got a slide that hints at the magnitude of Toronto's economic influence in just a moment. The Federal Railroad Administration conducted another study in 2021. They conducted 3 of these regional rail plans, one for the Midwest. They have not done one for the Northeast yet, and they still want to do it. But the purpose of this study is really to do a market analysis, to look at the major cities and travel between them, and what kind of a market is there for passenger rail if costs were not a factor, right? If all the pieces could come together to provide the infrastructure, what are people interested in riding and how successful would that be? And it shows a very strong demand for travel in the Midwest, including high-speed rail or approximating high-speed rail between some major markets, including some that are pointed from Chicago out, beyond the Midwest, towards Pennsylvania, towards upstate New York, towards central Pennsylvania. And it'll be very interesting when that Northeast regional rail plan happens to get a better sense of what markets are through Erie. And then through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the IIJA, there were 69 studies funded around the country for new passenger rail services, improved passenger rail services. And there happens to be a gap in those studies, and Erie's right in the middle of that gap. We know there's a demand for more service, but until there's a specific feasibility study, a specific service plan, we don't have a lot of specifics about what those services could be. But we do know that not too far away in New York, developments are underway to provide a much higher level of service between Buffalo and New York City, with improved connections to Toronto, Niagara Falls. And if you can get from Erie to Buffalo, the connections are really going to be strong. Here's that slide I was talking about that's comparing skylines. It's like you're looking at the same city. New York and Chicago have always been the great skylines in the United States. Toronto's skyline rivals Chicago these days, and it's growing very fast. And the economic influence of Toronto is such that Buffalo is basically metropolitan Toronto now. And it's a big economic engine. And if you can get from here to Buffalo, you're part of that economic activity. And you want to invite that economic activity to Erie, right? And when you invite economic activity via passenger rail, we all know what happens when you build a highway. You know you're going to get a Walmart. You know you're going to get a truck stop. You know you're going to get a mall, right? With passenger rail, it comes in very different forms. It's focused right in the downtown area, near a station, near a lovely station like you've got here in Erie, and you start to see growth around that station. You see travel activity, you see economic activity focused in an area like that. So it brings that energy into downtown areas. And in other cities where there's high performance rail, you're seeing 80-story development, near a station in a place like Miami. You're seeing 100-story development, in New York, but it's being extended to smaller markets like Erie that are within the shed, of the big markets. Okay, So real quick, I can talk a little bit about the procedures, how you deliver an economic impact study, what it looks at. You know, what's the job activity? What kind of economic impact from travel? What's the economic impact of growth near a station? And you have to start with some assumptions of how many people are going to ride and what's the network look like. We can get into more details. I'm sure we can make this presentation available to anybody who wants to look at it, and feel free to come and ask questions to me later if you'd like to. What an economic impact does not do is it does not establish the feasibility, the costs, the ridership of a new service in a corridor. That's a different kind of study. It's a much more involved study. And just to mention that developing a passenger rail service requires a lot of time, it requires a lot of shared investments by different parties, and it requires a lot of patience. It doesn't just happen overnight. And Pennsylvania would love to deliver more service. There are constraints, you know, in the funding available to do it. But we know that there's a market out there, and I'm expecting more analysis in the coming years to bring some clarity to really what those markets are. So let's look at some maps real quick. These are services that are out there today. You see the purple Pennsylvania line connecting Pittsburgh to New York. The red lines are those Amtrak long distance services, including the Lakeshore Limited through Erie, connecting to Chicago and the East Coast. There's another one, if you can get to Cleveland in the middle of the night, you can catch a train that's going Chicago to Washington, D.C., the Capital Limited. So those are the services that are out there. And again, you can see if you get to Buffalo, there are definitely things to connect to. And then there are planning studies underway. In Cleveland, one of those studies is the exploration of Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, with economic draws to pull that study further south towards Nashville, for example. There's another study that's looking at linking Cleveland to Toledo and Detroit. So increasingly, if you can get to Cleveland, there are options. Nothing yet connecting Erie to Pittsburgh, for example. But upstate New York continues to grow. But I think in the coming years, as we see FRA's analysis of markets, there will be a market that emerges, you know, that shows Pittsburgh to Erie. It's not just connecting these two cities. It's how are they part of other economies. And I think what's probably going to emerge is Pittsburgh to Toronto is an interesting market that can go through Erie, that can finally provide a passenger rail connection, you know, to Pittsburgh. We'll see. The feasibility needs to be studied. But also, you know, some of that consideration like Buffalo area to Cleveland could also benefit Erie. So do we want to consider some of these future potential connections in an economic impact study, or is that too far forward looking? That's a determination that needs to be made. So, you know, the next step would be to find funding if there is truly interest in an economic impact study, and make some determinations about what kind of a network we're talking about. That's it for the presentation. Okay.
All right, so first of all, I'd like to just start off and say that Peter has graciously come here for free to offer his services about this. And the idea is not that the MPO would fund this, but that the MPO could potentially sponsor a study. So be the recipient or applicant for funds to do this type of analysis. So with that in mind, does anyone have any questions? Would the MPO be supportive of this type of study? Or any other questions that you would have for Peter?
Yeah, I guess first off, any questions for Peter?
I got a couple questions, but just like, who do you represent again, Peter?
I work for a company called WSP. It's a consulting firm,
Okay,
passenger rail consulting.
okay, all right. And I mean, I appreciate his knowledge, of course, and I mean, Brian, as far as your, involvement the last how many years, like, is there any, like, local stakeholder that would, like Fly Erie Fund? I mean, people from the airport come to us and kind of update us. I mean, is there like anybody that actually has skin in the game, and not discounting your role, but, I mean, we have EMTA who's here. Is there like Amtrak people that want this, or just a question? And
That's a good question.
I'm just curious, like, you're up here promoting them, and I think that's very admirable in that, and I don't know, you had any input on that, or?
Amtrak rolled out a vision in 2021 that showed, hey, we think there's a market to grow. And at that time they were saying, and we think we can have money to actually do a startup service. And then over time, state support could kick in.
Okay.
Their position has changed with current administration, but these studies are still underway around the country to explore different markets. We just don't have one of those studies right here, right now.
Gotcha, okay, just curious.
We have reason to believe there's at least one or more entities who might be willing to do this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And we're pursuing. And that's all I can say at this point. But, we believe there is an interest.
I got a question about the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
All of these lines that have been designated as in very poor shape, and we've had some major accidents on it, we're gonna put a 220-mile-an-hour train on it?
No, if you're building 220 miles per hour, that is whole new infrastructure that's completely separated from freight trains. It's completely separated from street crossings. That's a whole new
It almost
infrastructure.
feel like a monorail, above ground or something like that.
Yeah, it's usually at ground level, and you put streets over or above and fence it off. But through some areas, yeah, you're building elevated viaducts, for example. Sure.
Thank you.
The Canadian National already owns, they bought the customer in Lake Erie. They could go from Erie to Toronto, through Erie and Pittsburgh. The tracks are there, unused, they're all welded, solid line. No, nothing.
Freight railroads are typically not motivated to provide a private service. And in fact, they really prefer, or a passenger service, sorry, and they really prefer if passenger service was not on their network. There's liability issues, all kinds of things. Amtrak is in a unique position to be able to negotiate for access to the freight rail network. But something that we're seeing increasingly is where people want more frequency and higher performance service. There are deals made to purchase a line that's of less strategic importance for freight movement to prioritize that line for passenger service. During the Obama administration, state of Michigan was able to purchase a line from Metropolitan Detroit all the way over to Kalamazoo, with the intent to grow that service to like 10 round trips per day towards Chicago. Steps are still underway towards that. Sometimes you can make deals like that.
The current Amtrak in Erie on a different line than like on 7, something. They're on the same.
It's operating on the freight railroad, dispatched by the freight railroad. Yeah, yeah.
The one question I have, I know you're talking about an economic impact study to look at if you added rail, if you added passenger rail, and what it would impact our economy. But my question goes back to a demand analysis of, is there a ridership demand, and how do we identify that need? Because if you don't need it, no one's gonna ride on it. You can say it's gonna bring in $1 million to the economy, but not if no one rides on it.
Yeah, this is a slide that I somehow missed earlier. That's just sort of like who wants to ride passenger rail. Business people, it's very attractive. If you go to the East Coast, those trains are packed with business people who are working on the trains while they're going to meetings, rather than sitting in a car and not being able to work, maybe being able to take a call, but having unproductive time. They love working on the train, right? You've got a lot of people who are choosing for a variety of reasons to drive less, and yet they still want to travel. A lot of seniors on the train. If you go to the station here, you'll probably see a lot of Amish in the middle of the night, you know, right? A lot of college students. College markets are huge for passenger rail. And, you know, increasingly this infrastructure is being built out in a way where, you know, everyone has easy access, including wheelchair accessibility, that sort of thing. But it's just, it can be a pleasant way to travel and be able to focus on something other than operating transportation yourself. So lots of people are wanting it, and we're seeing around the world and around the country now that when you improve the service and provide the option, it does attract people.
Yeah, what surprised me in working in Harrisburg and with the government there, was how many people in the capital commute to Philadelphia by train every day.
Yeah.
And I knew Senator Specter well, and he and Joe Biden rode the train from Washington home together for years. In Eastern Pennsylvania, you know, this is a way of life. We in Western Pennsylvania have not had the access of Pittsburgh to Erie connection. We have a lot of ties with Pittsburgh, you know, and Cleveland connection.
And Buffalo too.
And also the other thing, the scope people envision is always a problem. When you talk about the 220 mile per hour trains, you have to think of it in the terms of the interstate highway system. Interstate highway system did not take necessarily existing roads. They built a whole new corridor and again put the crossings under and over for limited access. And we have to come to that realization in America that this is a true form. Europe, always surprised you can get anywhere on time, even the smallest of towns.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. But I think it's probably resolved that would be the key. And as far as the impact for Erie, if you had a better connection to, say, Cleveland by rail or Pittsburgh by rail, you would probably find that people will take advantage of it, and business people will take advantage of it. And another interesting thing about the Eastern Corridor, you have a lot of people that cannot afford property in Montgomery County, Maryland, and that's the highest in the land. And they will commute as far as from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Every day to Washington to work.
Yeah.
By rail. And we have some of that here. I mean, their real estate in certain areas like Pittsburgh is going up at an amazing rate, especially Cranberry. And they're maybe people that would look to be, you know, passenger in.
There's a really interesting national and international trend that since the pandemic, passenger rail ridership has actually exceeded pre-pandemic levels. And part of that is hybrid work options. And people can work out in the country or live out in the countryside in a place where they can, you know, afford the quality of life that they're looking for, and occasionally make those business trips and work on the train, right, when they're making those trips. And so, yeah, across the country, ridership is higher now than the pandemic or pre-pandemic.
There's such that, like, I mean, there is that romantic thing about, you know, train travel, and it seems like that's increasing in that. And until you say, all right, well, I'll pick you up at 1:30, we're gonna get your train at 2:15. I ain't that romantic. Right. But I mean, yeah, it's like this catch-22, like, what do you, yeah, man, you've got your hands.
How do you get daytime service in Erie? That's the challenge, you know?
Even a return trip, I think.
Yeah.
Going to Chicago, if we get there, you can't get home the same day. You can't get home till the next day. So you're going for business travel.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay overnight? I mean,
Yeah, let's keep an eye on the planning that's going on in Cleveland and Buffalo and find a way to complete the gap somehow.
I think if the consideration or discussion is whether or not the MPO would want to sponsor, try to get grants for a study like this, the part that I don't know anything about, I'm not clear on, maybe it's too much to discuss here, but you mentioned you mentioned the economic impact study, and then a different study that's much more involved that has to do, I think, with demand and things that I think you were touching on, right, Jessica? So I guess my question would be, where would a study like this get us to? Is it the right study? Is there a sequential order that you do this, then the demand, then something else? Or that gap with the CID, that Erie's in the middle of, like, we'd want to be strategic about that, I think, before we,
Yeah, and there doesn't have to be a specific order. Economic impact studies are often the result of people knowing that there's interest, and wanting to maintain that interest and looking for steps towards how can we get an actual corridor study, a feasibility study, and what would that be? It keeps the conversation going, so you can talk about what's that desired network and how do you get towards analyzing that network.
okay.
Well, I guess, Emily, is there a specific ask for today, something that we would vote on, or is this something for us to consider for maybe the coordinating committee or future meeting down the road?
I mean, technically, the coordinating committee would have to vote on anything, but would anyone be opposed if MPO did start looking at funding for something like this?
for funding.
Looking for, so not,
outside of
yeah, so
your-
not that the MPO would be
Transportation.
funding anything, but the MPO would
At what
be
kind of
a
level
sponsor.
is this? Yeah, at what level initially?
A good economic impact study usually starts at about 100,000.
But you're looking for a sponsor, Emily, just somebody that could be the applicant for the funding, potential funding sources.
So I guess would you authorize me to do some work to look for funding for this study?
I would not be opposed.
Okay.
If you're,
I would be I would be more than not opposed, I would be encouraging.
okay, yeah, I mean, do we need a motion
I
then?
mean, we
If you want
we
to,
have,
you can
having our
motion. You can
research.
motion.
I'll make a motion to, for Emily
I
to
would
put her
do
shoes
that.
on and your track shoes on and see what you can find.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we have a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Peter, does that then give you, like, after today's meeting, give you a little, like, you can go to the next MPO, like, just a little bit of,
I
a
can,
bullet in your chamber now to go to the next group and say, hey, listen, the Erie MPO is behind us and.
what I can do is go to my employer and say, hey, there's enough interest that there might be a study at some
Right,
point.
great.
Can we have some support to allow me to go and address questions, And then when a study comes out, we'd be interested in competing, to perform a study. And it would be a competitive process, I would assume,
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve Emily to seek funding for the rail study. Do we have any other discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Didn't have enough to do, huh? You are a punishment.
Oh, we're getting lots of free work from Peter, which is very, very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was very informative.
You're sure maybe the Chuck's off too.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Julia from Central Office. Will the PowerPoint be made available after the meeting?
Yes, I will send it around after the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. It was a great PowerPoint. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to our next item of business, which is the Bayfront project update. Brian, I don't know if that's you or somebody.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we are working towards, a public meeting in the near future. Within the next month is the goal. It will be advertised and everything. That would be, I should say, a public plans display just to talk about, the status and the schedule and the construction phasing ahead. So, no major changes, no changes whatsoever to the scope of work or the finished product. But as mentioned in the past, the schedule's not in great shape. We saw many delays with utility relocations that are, I think, have already been discussed maybe or alluded to here. So we're gonna just have more information about that. So everybody just stay tuned for that update, but nothing additional.
Okay. Did the weather also impact the schedule or?
I can't say that it did, actually. I think we had winter shutdowns built into the schedule. The biggest challenge was the assumption that we would be able to bore under the parkway for underground utility conduit and State Street. And what we ran into, we weren't able to do that, had to open cut it, had to take it on a much longer route. All of that with some other things is really the biggest challenge, obstacle.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And I'm sure Emily will share any information on public meetings or things if they're scheduled.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. Thanks. Okay, then we will move on to agency updates. First up is PennDOT District 1. I don't know who. Mark?
Morning, everybody. First off, the newsletter we sent out, was in February. It was provided at that meeting. I'll be working on that and have that ready to share for our next meeting in June. There'll be some projects that'll come off that list. Some will be added, just, keep current with, let schedules as projects are let, obviously will drop off. So look forward to, an updated newsletter, for the next meeting in June. Just a few updates on a couple of projects that are on there. The State Route 832 Peninsula Drive project, that was scheduled to let in April. We did meet the let date and got a good bid, so that will be moving on. Later this summer, we'll be starting construction on that. The Mill Creek local federal aid route is currently out to bid right now. It's scheduled to let on the 5th. And we're pretty close to getting the city of Erie federal aid route also out to advertise. We're hoping to still get that let by the end of June as well. Probably the big significant project that we're working on is the I-79 bridges over the railroad tracks coming into the city. We are wrapping up preliminary engineering now, working with the consultant to get them started on final design. We're probably a few weeks away from issuing the notice to proceed for them to get started on that. So they'll be busy throughout the summer and the rest of the year getting the final plan specs and estimates ready for that project. That's moving along pretty well. We're still hopeful to advertise and let it really next year for construction to start. That's all I had for today. Any questions on any of those or any other?
I do have a couple. First, we'll take the last first. That 79 project, is that just going to be reconstruction of those, or is that? I'm sorry, is that going to be rehab or is that going to be?
A rehabilitation.
Okay.
The bridge deck is going to be removed and replaced. There'll be some repairs made to the beams, new bearings, and some painting. That'll be a rehabilitation.
And then going back to your first one, just the Peninsula Drive, just to address Brenda's concern. I know that she was, mentioned that pedestrian safety wasn't specifically stated as a goal for the project, but I know that at least at 6th Street, you're eliminating the slip lanes to help with pedestrian crossings and things. I don't know if you wanted to address just any of her concerns, but I know that pedestrian safety is taken into consideration of all of these projects.
Yeah, and just speaking on that project itself, it does have the enhanced crosswalks. It also has the audible pedestrian signals, the APS that Fred had mentioned earlier. So that the new signals will have that as part of that project.
Okay. That was it for me. Anybody else have any questions for Ron?
I hate to bring it up, but old 99. The one bridge they're working on, they're doing a fantastic job. The other bridge they haven't touched. They're supposed to be working on. Is there some kind of a holdup on this then? Or is it just that they're not delegating the crews enough to do it?
I know there was a specific sequence in which they were supposed to do those bridges. Now, it's been a while since I was familiar with
They were
that.
supposed to do each end and leave the center one until after each end was done.
Okay.
And they were supposed to do the two at the same time. They've got all the close signs and everything there, but they haven't worked on the north end other than maybe a day or two at the most. And that was mostly to put up the signs, and I just wondering whether there was a legal reason for it, or whether there's just not delegating the crews for it, or what the problem is.
Yeah, that I'm not familiar with, but I can check with our construction staff, get an update, find out what's going on. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I live between two of the bridges.
I understand your concern.
Any other questions?
We also are going to have two other projects. They're going to be seeing work being done on I-79 and I-90 that were awarded in the last month. So we are going to be doing a resurfacing project between miles 18 and 23 on I-90. Hopefully to see work being done on that during the course of this late summer and the fall. It's hopefully going to go into construction, be let in July, with construction starting in August. And then they're going to be doing some patching from mile marker 23 on 90 to 35 on 90. As a part of that project, then they're going to be doing also some repairs on I-79 that will go from mile 165 to 165 to 178. That will be done this fall. And then there is a project that's going to be let this fall that will do resurfacing the entire length from 165 to 178 on 79 next year. So you'll see some repairs being done this summer for on 79, but the full project will be done to take care of all of that and resurface it next summer. So those will be going on as well. We just received that funding last month.
That was a huge, nearly $90 million ask. It was something, those are two projects that we had prioritized in the past on the interstate system and weren't able to get funding for. So central office, the program center, the interstate steering committee really helped us out. So we're super grateful. That's a huge amount, 90 million. It's a big win.
And the gates for the ramps are also going in this year, right?
Yes.
Interstate
The,
are on 90.
the contract is going, the goal is to get them installed before winter this year. Yeah. Yeah. And while we're on our agency updates, I wanted to mention, many of you know Sarah Tassone. She's recently promoted. She acted in Courtney's former position as planning and programming manager, now permanently in the position. So we're happy to have her and Courtney and her both working together. It's going to be a great team. They have a couple of vacancies within their unit. So some planning positions that we are posted right now. We're looking forward to filling those and having a full team again. And then Troy Seifert, usually when I'm in a meeting with Troy Seifert, everybody there knows who he is already, but Troy is the supervisor of our municipal services unit. If you don't know Troy, he took what was Josh Montgomery's position. So he's the lead of that unit now. And that unit's been incorporated into the asset management planning and programming unit because we think that we'll just better be able to serve, the communities that we work with all of those folks working closely together. So if you have anything related, see Troy after the meeting. You've been to one of these before, Troy?
No.
Okay, good. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Moving on, sticking with PennDOT, but moving down to central office. Julia, do you have any updates?
Yes, just one. So the 2025 12-year program public comment period ended on April 30th. The program centers 12-year program section is currently compiling the results from that survey. And we'll be making those results available to all Pennsylvania MPO RPOs in the next few weeks. And also in addition, there was a virtual public forum on April 10th, and a recording of that forum. I'll send a link out to Emily with some follow-ups, and she can share with the TAC. But yeah, that was it.
All right, great, thank you. Any questions for Julia? All right, then our next agency, EMTA.
Couple of things. One is that we did have our first kickoff meeting with our consultant, Rockland Planning Associates and PennDOT, about a week and a half ago. And I talked to them, to Rockland, and we are going to collaborate with WRA on the long range transportation plan so that everything is nice and tight. We'll probably be moving into beginning to look at plans for some of the community outreach. We're going to start looking at that. We're going to start meeting in June, and then go from there. Right now, we have our FTA triennial next week. So, and most of the folks right now are out. They're at the PPTA, Pennsylvania Public Transit Association conference this week. So, so next month we're going to get into it full bore. Other than that, don't really have any more.
Any questions for Dave? Just want to thank you again for hosting us here. Always great to be down here. Next up is other business. Does anybody have any other items of business for the committee? Right, then hearing none, I will move on to hearing of the public. Any members of the public would like to be heard at this time?
I've raised my hand.
Okay, Freda, go ahead.
Yeah, I am a train traveler. I have a ticket to go to Worcester, Mass in August. I have used the train. I used it a lot more when I lived in Washington State, and there was regular service down to Eugene from Bellingham and Seattle. But sometimes I will drive to Buffalo in order to get a more favorable schedule to get to New York City. And I noticed there is also it's possible to park at the Depew station and pick up there are several times a day one could take a train to New York City. Unfortunately, for this trip to Worcester, I am going to come home in the middle of the night, and I'm amazed at how crowded the train has been when I've taken it. It's just like with buses. Nobody wants to ride the last bus of the day. There needs to be more train service before you'll see a lot of people riding it, because you really have to work hard to use that train because of the infrequency of it. And the reason I go to Buffalo is so that I can get one more reasonable day in New York for what I have to do to scramble to find a place to stay. So yeah, we do need more robust train service, and if they can figure out a way to get to Pittsburgh, that would be wonderful too. I would like to see if there is local funding of such a study, that we make sure that the opportunity to participate, to conduct such a study is available to diverse contracting firms. And yeah, again, I urge that no street traffic improvement project should go out without including every possible opportunity to add accessible pedestrian signals. And I just don't know what happened at State Street and 26, that was missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, hearing none. Last item on our agenda is adjournment. Our next meeting is of the coordinating committee. That is on June 11th, and that will be at Summit Township. So since there's no other business, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you. In a second. Leanne, all right, all in favor, say aye. We are adjourned at 11:15.
So 99 is what we basically.